So we got an amazing show on the way today. I'm super excited about this one. We got a special guest, Jared the Rebel. Revel. Damn, this guy is four-time middleweight champ.
That's right, yeah.
10 professional wins now.
Correct, yeah.
And you just had a big one this weekend, a rear naked chokeout in the first round.
Yeah, man.
How did it feel, man?
I feel it's good, it just justifies all the hard work I kind of put in and, all the years that I've kind of sacrificed and put a lot of work in, right? So it's nice to kind of get through that, and especially my last fight was like a 25-minute war, right? So it was nice to kind of get through this one and nice and quick, right?
So on the scale of accomplishments, how is this one rate? Like how did this fight feel compared to the other ones?
At this point, I feel I'm at a level where, every fight is the most important fight, right? Especially being on a winning streak and kind of trying to, I'm knocking on the door of that next level, right? Everything's so important, and each one means that much more, and there's so much more involved in it, right? Because you're chasing, you're after that, going to the next level, getting to there, right? So it definitely puts a lot more added to that, right? So the accomplishment feels great, and it feels like like you keep going and you're striving for what you want, right?
Each one feels special in its
for sure,
own
yeah.
way. Yeah. So how's the body feel after this fight?
This one's actually good. Regardless of I got through with pretty much being unscathed, not getting really hit. There's so much put into your training camp and so much put into emotionally and physically when you're coming through it, right? So I always have like a super adrenaline kick and high for a couple days, and then I kind of crash usually on Mondays a couple days after, right? And it's just, I think, just going through the weight cutting and putting your body through a lot of stress in different areas, right? It definitely brings you down a little bit, right?
Yeah. And how drastic of weight cuts do you have to do?
My weight cuts, like some people would say, like it's drastic if you're not somebody maybe that's used to this world, right? Like I cut about 20 pounds, but that's over a period of time, right? I walk around 205, 208. That's my walk around weight. And
And you were what at the fight?
I fight at 185. Like I weigh in at 185, so 20 pounds, right? But I usually fight at about 196 to 198 on fight day. Yeah. So I rehydrate about 10 to 13 pounds after, I get about 36 hours to rehydrate and to, fill up, and I usually go about 10 to 13 pounds up. So
nice. And how long did you prepare for this fight?
I'm constantly training because I want to be able to fight as much as possible. We didn't really have an opponent like my first opponent that we had, so I knew I was going to be fighting probably about 8-9 weeks out. And my first opponent dropped out. Got a second opponent, he dropped out. Just nothing, either injuries or just time conflictments. And so about 5 weeks out, we were struggling to kind of find somebody to replace it in that time, but we did find somebody, right? So I knew I was going to be fighting, so I'm constantly preparing. And as I like to say, I become more of a professional as times went on, right? Like whereas when I first started, I was unhealthy. I'd go back up to, I'd just eat like crap after, right? And I'd go back up to, 220, 215, right? And then all of a sudden I had a fight and I'd just be like 2 weeks of crazy dieting and really bad on my body.
Is that pretty common for fighters to kind of like fluctuate like that?
I think some, for sure. To me, everybody's body style is a little different. Like I walk at probably 208 and I'm already at like 7 to 8% body, so I don't have like a crazy amount to lose at that point, right? So
you're 208 and you're training how often at that time? Say when you're not training for a fight.
I'm not training for a fight, just because I live in the gym, man. That's my job. Like I own a gym, so I'm there every day. So sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, 6 days a week. But then there's some days where I only train like a really hard session once, right? And I listen to my body now that I'm getting older, and I think more wise in that sense. Like once I hit 30, it's like I can't just beat the crap out of myself and then go the next day. So I realized that recovery and listening to my body is a lot wiser, and then I'm able to perform at the highest level, right? So if I'm not feeling one day, I'll take a day off. Like it's not like I used to think, I had to grind every day, I have to outgrind, but at this point, I've put so many tools that, like I have skill, right? And I think just maintaining and getting better each day, but I don't have to like break my body every day and, outgrind my competition. I like that's, I like that mentality in some aspects, right? But not to detriment of progression, right? Like I don't want to, before I would train 4 times a day, be so exhausted the next day, but I'd still train harder that next day because I got to out-train my company, like all that. But that there is a limit to it. Like, I don't, I've been through a whole stage where that whole, like when your opponent's sleeping, you're up, like, I used to get up at 5, so I'd be the first one I would train before I open the gym. I do all that, but I realized like, sleep's really important now. Recovery, like for me now at this stage, I've went to, I think about 3 years ago when the UFC Performance Institute opened, I went with one of our guys, Jeremy Kennedy, there, and I just like looked around and I was like, this is what like the sport is missing. Like when you look at all the professional athletes, like the NFL, NHL, they have like the recovery, right? Like the nutritionist recovery, like, everybody, they have so much based around recovering and healing your body. Look at LeBron James, like he spends, $1 million, $2 million on recovery. So in this last little while, man, I've literally like invested a lot of my money into those type of tools where Normatec boots I got, I've been rocking those for about 3 years, just like every day, man, I wear those. So I've focused a lot on that now instead of just training so hard. Like I try to make each training session the most impactful and best for myself, but I'm not trying to crush myself anymore.
So, getting to the point where you're at now though, and you're defeating lots of guys, and on this one they had to find an opponent for you. What's the next step? Like you're the champion now, you've defended it 4 times now, right?
So I've defended it twice, but I won like they call it 4-time champion because I was an amateur champion, so they're counting that. But I won the title and then I defended it twice, so that'd be 3-time champion as a pro, right? At this level, there are some top guys in Canada still. Like for me, I signed on with Iridium Sports Agency, right? Which is they've been great to me. They've got a lot of guys signed to UFC in this last little bit, especially locally. Tristan Connolly, Cole Smith, a lot of guys that are on their roster. They've got them fights, kind of to breaking that barrier to for UFC or something like that. A lot of times for Canadians, it's like short notice fights, or go to the Contender Series. Obviously, I'm ready to fight again, like right away. So the next month or 2, I would love to get right back in there. Whether it's doing a short notice, getting a call up like that, or defending it again, right? Because I think just the more wins, like I'm 10-2 now. I finished most of my fights. I'm exciting whether or not the fight. I've only went the distance a couple times, but they were exciting fights, and I'm in there to finish, right? So that's kind of what people want to see.
You're able to do it when you don't take that much damage, right? But I mean, like if you were in those wars, like you said, the longevity of a fighter only goes so far, right? Yeah. So
I've been very fortunate that when I started like jiu-jitsu with my game, and it's I can utilize that. Like when I'm like this fight, that's what I looked at. Like the easiest path of execution was to take him down and submit him. I could have probably tried to stand, pick him apart and do that. I just felt that like the best way for me to be able to fight right away again, where he was the weakest, was on the ground, and take him out and utilize that and be smart about that. Make it exciting, mount, throw some damage, and then finish it off, right? But that would be the goal, is that I can, fight at the highest level. I want to, compete at that highest level, see what I made him, see what I can be challenged with.
Any plans for? Do you have any? Like I think at one point you were almost heading towards the UFC, right?
Well, like way back there was like the goal was that I think it was 5-1, and they were doing the Ultimate Fighter show, so that was kind of like the goal, right? That was at that point, that was many years, and then they canceled that kind of season for my weight class. So that was the goal then. And then this last fight I had that I defended against a Colin Hart. He was ex-UFC kind of vet. He had fought on the Ultimate Fighter against like Kelvin Gastelum, a couple of guys, and that's so that was a big win. And we were kind of hoping that with UFC coming to Vancouver right after that time, that you're sucks. You're hoping that somebody gets injured, but that's kind of like the way on, right? That's how Tristan Connolly kind of got that opportunity. It was like last week, so
that was a huge fight.
Yeah, that was a huge fight. So that was obviously kind of the path. Somebody got injured, but it was not till the Wednesday, right? So it was kind of like I didn't get that little window. So now I'm just kind of hoping that something transpires and I can make that happen.
It's awesome, man. And you will be there hoping all your fans watching you, or I think they're hoping you to get you to that level, man. It'd be cool to see you get there. One of the reasons I wanted to actually bring you on today is because you're not only an inspiration inside the gym and the ring, man, but you're a huge inspiration to people outside as well. You know, a lot of people don't know your story and what made you to what you are today. If you're willing to share some of your journey to get to where you are today, I know that you've had battles outside of the ring.
Yeah, of course,
I think actually when and how I know this is 8-9 years ago we did personal training school together, right? Yeah. And that's how we kind of became like friends. And then I remember we were gonna link up. You were gonna come downtown one time, and I was like, "Hey, man, let's go for a drink." And you were like, "No, man, I'll have a coffee though. If you're down with a coffee." So. One of the battles that people don't know about is your battle with addiction, man. Can you shed a little light on that and kind of where you've come from that?
You know, it's funny because like while I went to school there, I was actually in treatment still. Like I was literally kind of in the second stage of it. Like I just finished up, so I was literally down the street from the school where I was actually in treatment. So I was you know, like I had finished the program, but I stayed an extra month just to kind of, you know, get things started, right? And so I started school because I was, you know, I had a passion for fitness. I had already been, been in the martial arts before that, and just pretty much predominantly doing jiu-jitsu at that time. But yeah, like, you know, I don't look at my like personally, I don't look at my story as like something that's like worse than anybody else. You know, I don't like to look at it like that. Like I had a lot of people that helped me throughout the way, but yeah, I definitely got into a lifestyle where. Yeah, like when it comes down to it, like I lost everything, right? Like I put myself in a really bad position where I could have been, you know, criminally charged. I could have, you know, things came about because of just the life I was living in and down a rough patch with drugs, right? And, you know, I always thought to myself, I always thought I had it going on. I thought I still looked good. I thought, you know, I had a job at the time. Right, so I was like, I can't be that bad, right? But clearly, you know, I was in some deep, in some deep trenches there with, you know, battling addiction. But you know, I wasn't able to kind of notice it, right, in that time. You know, I still had a place to live at that time. And then when it all kind of came to, you know, I lost a job. You know, I was in some serious trouble with law. You know, obviously, I lost my place where I was living. You know, I clearly, you know, I had family that did band to help me out, and it wasn't like I had lost everybody, like all my family and stuff. I lost a lot of their trust and the ability to have them, you know, have that faith in me that I was doing the right thing, right? So, yeah, it was probably the one of the hardest things for me to come, because I always thought I was a very proud person. I thought I was, you know, I never liked to ask for help. I was always people came to for help. So I didn't know how I was going to be able to come out of that. You know, I thought I kind of disgraced my family name. You know, it was a tough time. I always say, like, my last like 90 hours, you know, I was kind of on the run and like kind of trying to run away from everything. What
made you want to change, man?
You know, I'll be honest, and I say this is like the moment when it all like I can remember it, like it's so crazy, and I think for me it was like when I can remember that last like 90 hours where I was like on that, like running away, like kind of like trying to get away, and like pretty much I didn't want to face it, right? I kind of came to the fact that I was either going to be going to jail or something like that. So and one of the people that, you know, I had affected to this day, like, yeah, he definitely was a huge part of saving my life. You know, I hurt him really bad, and he eventually texted me and said, "Hey man, it's just money, we can get over this." And it was like, in that moment, you know, I was still so ashamed, right, that I didn't want to like face anybody.
Yeah.
But that right there was the moment. I always wanted like to stop, man. Like, trust me, like I remember like every morning I'd wake up, I'd look myself in the mirror. You know, I'd slept for like an hour and a half, right? And I'd look in the mirror and I'd be like, okay, today's the day I stop, right? And I'd go to work, I'd get every, you know, and then all of a sudden it was like clockwork, I'm right back at it. So I wanted to stop. I just didn't know how to, or did I really want it that bad, really want it, right? I wasn't willing to tell anybody that I had that problem. I didn't want to, like, I thought nobody knew all that. So that was like a, kind of an opportunity for me. And, I had to face a lot of things. A lot of people, obviously, I felt super ashamed, but through it, he actually connected me with somebody that was, was great, and it was called The Last Door. And I remember going there and I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be brutal, man. I'm going to be around a bunch of these junkies, like not thinking that I'm that thing, right? Like, I'm like, oh, I don't look like any, like, I don't live on the street, all those things. And, yeah, man, it ended up being like one of the best experiences of my life. It propelled me to be the person I am today. I'm super grateful for it. I'm 8.5 years clean now. I use that as like motivation, strength. The people I met, some of the dopest people in my life today, some of my best friends, the biggest motivating factors, some of my, people I look up to, right, are who I met through that place, right? And and that community that's involved in just recovery, right? And it definitely it gave me a kind of a second chance, right? And I realized like this is I do it for myself, like because I believe in myself and all that. But at the same point, man, there's so many people that have invested in me as a person, and I owe it to them to give my absolute best, right? And I'm not saying that like I only do it for other people. That's not what I'm trying to say by that. But people believe in me and gave me that second chance, and they didn't have to, right? Because awesome, I hurt people and I did those things. So it's just a return on their investment. That's the way I look at it, and I just got to give my absolute best. And
is it hard for you to look back at that? Like, do you because you said like you don't look at how far you've come as like this big accomplishment, and I don't think a lot of people do, right? Like I've heard it many times that people really don't look at it like that, that come from that. And honestly, like it takes a lot of people to get to that level, whether it's even addiction or 100%. Even weight loss, where they're living really unhealthy lives. For them to act, they have to get in a position where they're super uncomfortable before they really make a change. But like when you reflect back on that time, does it still give you that feeling like that in your stomach, or are you kind of like
for sure? Like the way I look at it is like sometimes I'm out and I think about like there's only been a few times where I was like it's too bad, like it's at my brother's wedding, like I was a year clean, right? And I was like, everybody's having a shot on his stag ram and golf. I was like, I felt like I wasn't a part of, and I was like, and then I just think about like when I can think back about those like feelings, like I don't wake up hungover anymore, man. So like for me that's a bonus. I personally don't need to, I'm not saying like I don't look down on anybody, because like that, like I made the choice, like that's like it's my I'm the one who can't handle my shit, right? So it's not like I don't look at anybody, like people that if their lives are together, if it's not unmanageable, then they don't got a problem. So I don't care, like if somebody wants to drink it, like I don't like I don't have any qualms about that, right?
Just aware of.
I just know where my leads to, and I'm not the type of person like even look at my life now like when I'm dieting hard. Like when I'm fighting hard, right? I don't just like I'm like I can't have a glass of wine with dinner, but like I don't have a glass of wine. I'm having the whole bottle. So I don't. I look at that like I look back at that. Sure, it was tough, and like the feelings I had. So I just like. I can't, the progression I've had, I'm not willing to risk it. You know what I mean? At the same point, like I could probably, be able to handle it and be better because I'm a lot wiser now. But like, what's the point? Like it doesn't, I can go out and be the life of the party, not have anything to drink, right? So, I'm very confident in myself now. Whereas before, I think we're leading back to kind of what you're talking about. I realized like, I had a false sense of pride. So like, it literally, I thought that I was too proud to ask for help. Right. And then I realized that like through that, I remember the day that I was at a counseling session. I remember, like he told me that I had low self-esteem, and I was like, what? I was so baffled.
The fighter in you came
I was like, what? I was like, my hands were like sweaty, and I was like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, no, like, I was like a captain of all my sports teams. Like I'm always confident. I'm always like, I had friends, all this, like I'm always confident. Like whenever I compete, like I'm so competitive, all this, I was like, of course I'm confident. Like I'm not, but I realized, so why don't you ask for help? And I was like, oh, because like I don't want people to think that I need them. He's like, oh, you don't want people to think less of you. And I was like, well, I don't want them to think I need them. He's like, yeah. Right? He's like, that's exactly it. You have low self-esteem because you want people to believe that you don't need them. And I was like, it was like mind-blowing to me, and the ability for me like to like accept it and to like to own it, right? The fact that I do need help, and it made me feel like I had so much more power over everything in my life, where I realized you need people. You need like what I'm talking about. Like when I fight, like I have the power of all the people that support me, and to me, I'm willing to ask for help all the time now. I still struggle once in a while, like everybody does, but I realize that's like a huge key to life, is like whether you are losing weight, whether you're trying to go work out at the gym, whatever you're trying to do in life, you need the people around you, if you want to be successful.
That's awesome, man. It's in as much as you say you don't feel like it, like you are an inspiration, and I'm sure to a lot of people. But also, like you get inspiration from other aspects.
For sure,
stuff,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So where would you say your biggest inspiration comes from, or motivation to keep going on and pushing forward?
Like, I have a lot of things that I definitely look at. I'll give you like maybe a few different, right, and different avenues where I find that source, right? But like my main one is my family. Like I definitely I'm inspired by so many people in my family. I never used to think that way about my parents, right? Like I was like, oh, like like as a kid you're like, oh, those people's parents are way cool, like all that stuff. But I realized through it, like my mom and dad are like the bossest people out there. Like what they do for other people is there's always been helping others, right? And I always looked at that as like, oh, they care about other people more than me, like what I mean? Because like they're helping these struggling people when like I'm your kid and I'm right here, like. But I realized like it took me so long in my life to realize that they gave me everything I needed in my household, and just because they were at school or they were out dealing, like I had a stable, like I had everything I needed to right in front of me, but I couldn't see it then, right? But like, so they're definitely like mad inspiration to me to like to be the best version of myself, and to kind of carry on that family legacy, right? And I have somebody, most people that follow me know like Pistol Pete. He's like my that kid,
Your number one fan.
Oh man, that kid inspires me like no other, and he's a big reason.
That's your cousin?
So he's my cousin, right? And I moved out here when I was 18, and he was 6 months old, and so I lived in their basement with them, right, and kind of helped raise him. So he's like my brother, my cousin, my nephew. He's my best friend, hands down. He's the one of the number one people in my life.
Come to your fights?
He hasn't come to any of my fights because it usually at the Hard Rock, and you have to be 19, right? And I'm not sure how much like he loves to come to my gym. We scrap in my cage. Like he comes in the cage. He loves that. He's just like, the kid's always happy. Like you know what I mean? And sure, he has moments when when he's sad, but like the ability where he has so many challenges in his life, and you know what I mean, makes it what it is. It just puts things in perspective, and like I got to be able to, like, with all the gifts I've been given in life and all the things I have, I got to be able to push forward and to give my best, right? Because somebody like that can, right? So those are like, family is so huge for me. And then when you look at other forms of, I was really big on a guy named Eric Thomas, just motivational speaker, just I just something about it when he speaks just it ignites me, man. And like, but I think what that is like, you can be inspired, but what do you do with that, right? So like that's where, like, I think the big disconnect with a lot of people, you can get inspired by like watching a video or something like that, but like, what do you do with that inspiration in that moment, or the motivation you've been given, right? And then you look at somebody like Kobe Bryant. Like I was always like a super fan. Like obviously I like the Lakers, I like all that, right? But just how they can articulate using that inspiration and what you do with it, right? And making those sacrifices and all those things, that really it intrigues me to see how other people, in all different walks of life, whether it's like the motivational speaking aspect, whether it's a sport, whether it's just at somebody at their day-to-day job, right? Like seeing how people overcome and achieve, right? It's always just like intrigued me. And I go to a lot of conferences. Like I went to Jamaica, like I followed that Eric Thomas kind of
Do you
all
coach
over
as well? Do you coach?
So I do. We do like I coach at the gym, and we have about 170 kids. And so for me, that inspires me when I see little kids excited to, and I kind of realized through it, like I always thought that like I just wanted to be the best in the world. That's like what I do, and then I realized through it, that whole thing. Like when I see, my student, we teach adults as well, and when I see them inspired by something I'm doing, it makes me know that what I'm doing is right, and like really a big part of why I try to excel at my sport, so I can show other people that, because it makes me feel good, man, when you do something that like that, right? So, and I never thought that I'd be in that situation. Both my parents are teachers, right? I never thought that I'd be kind of in that.
You're growing up, buddy.
Right? Yeah, it changes, right? Yeah. So it definitely, so for me, even in that moment, like everything I do now, I have to think about am I being a good role model? Because, that was one of the biggest things when I was going through that, coming through my addiction was I was ashamed because my cousins and people that looked up to me already at that point, I felt I let them down, right? And it was I was so worried about I thought that they looked up to me, and I was that now I've fallen, right? But seeing the fact that when you fall you can get back, it's all about. So this is another cool moment because the same guy that told me that it was just money, I remember him saying, he's like, this will not be the thing that defines you in life. Sure. He's like, it's what you do after that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, man, we're excited to see you do some big things, man. I want to see you keep killing it out there. Keep being an inspiration. And regardless of which route you go, man, you're going to still be the awesome guy that you are, man. And it's an honor to have you on the podcast today. Thanks for coming out, my man.
Thanks for having me out.